Hello, everyone. Before we start the podcast, I'd like to mention Pro Political Gear. Check out propoliticalgear.com for your political apparel today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Pro Political Pod. Today's date is March 24th, 2023, and we got some news for you, as always, and we're ready to begin.
Let me be clear.
I am
You peddle false narratives.
Sexy boo.
We'll see who cancels who.
Watch me.
So today we have the World Athletics to exclude transgender women from female events. They did say on this matter, we're not saying no forever. Okay, they said the working group will look at any prevailing or changing or furthering of our understanding in that space. We don't know enough. We now need to know more, and that is the journey that we're on. But we weren't prepared to risk the female category on that basis. So, even though it seems like it's a little gloom for the transgender community, anything can happen. As they said, they're just learning about transgenders being in sports, and in this case specifically women. So Andrew, I assume you have a lot of thoughts on your mind on this one. Oh, and also the one rule before I say anything, before I let you go, the rule is that they could be in it if they're trans, but they can't go through male puberty. So that's the big piece here that I know Andrew has a lot to talk on.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, when it comes to this issue of transgenders in sports, I think there's a lot of I think it's like a real concern, to want to decide like how that plays out, because obviously you have people who are transgender, that's just fact, whether you like it or not. So how you navigate, because in most spaces it's pretty straightforward how you have them basically just treat them like women because they are women basically. And for most aspects of life, you can kind of get away with that with no real issue. I think sports is one thing where there's a lot more contention and debate because, there are like physical differences, and those physical differences manifest themselves in sports competition. But at the same time, I think they take that, like a lot of people who are, against, I guess, trans rights, take that real concern and turn it into something that's basically like they try to use it to kind of further like an anti-trans. They don't want anyone to be trans. Basically, they don't think it's a real thing. So they use that as a kind of like a gateway, I guess, for people. Because I think this is like one of the few issues when it comes to social issues where I think the more conservative side kind of wins out to most people. Like if you ask like a person on the street, like, "Hey, do you think trans women should compete with women?" It's pretty likely that your average normal person who doesn't know too much about this stuff will probably say, yeah, no, they shouldn't. But at the same time, that shouldn't, like, just because that's a fact doesn't mean we shouldn't pretend like don't have to do any kind of work on it. I like that their approach to this is going to be to kind of follow the data. And even they're not starting out by saying you can't do it at all, but people who've transitioned their whole lives. Because if you transition, like if you block male puberty, like that's pretty close. There aren't that many people who do that because of social forces. A lot of people who transition tend to do it when they're young adults or even later in some cases. Like you don't really have that many cases of it being like a lifelong thing when you're a child. That's a more recent phenomenon. And of course that's like a really highly contentious thing now too. But overall, I think the way they're going about it seems like it's coming from like a good place. And that can be because there's a lot of examples of other institutions that are kind of rolling back some pro-trans sentiment purely from a political standpoint, but this doesn't read off to me as political. No, do you agree with that, or do you?
I mean, it's weird because it is political, even if it isn't.
Well, yeah,
Right?
but it's not.
Like,
But I guess I should say it doesn't come off as like.
I know you're against. I know you're trying to say you're against politicians or anyone that's in politics to push their agenda on sports. I know
It
you
doesn't
don't
feel like
like that.
I guess it doesn't feel like a reactionary position. It feels like a wait and see. You know, we want this to play out in an intelligent way.
Hmm.
I guess political probably wasn't the right term. But yeah, so I think, yeah, but I think generally that's a pretty smart way to go about it. And I think what I like the most about the idea of it is that one, I mean, obviously it's open to reversing it if the evidence, because that's what my whole thing on this, my position on this issue is. I lean towards, yeah, they should, but obviously I think there should be more research into it. I think if in my head, like based on what I've seen, I think it'll play out in a more favorable way for them. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think just based on what I've read and how like hormones affect the body and stuff like that, I think most trans people will be in a position where it's pretty fair for them to compete. But I could be wrong. I'm not
I
an
think,
expert on sports, and I'm not an expert on the human body.
yeah, I
But
think that
at the same time,
it's women's sports, so I think that's also something to consider too. Like while you're talking about it, because I feel like there's a difference there, right?
well, what do you mean by that?
I think there's a difference between like there's a total difference between men's sports and women's sports.
In
Like
terms of like their
women,
physiology or what?
for example, women have more of a battle with this, I think, than the men do. Like women are more prone to be like, no, we do not accept trans people into our sports. Where the guys are just
Well, that
like,
depends on who you ask. There's women
of
who are
course,
there's cis
but
women who are for it.
of course there are. But if you look at what's going on with some of these, I mean, we could go back to the swimming and all that. A lot of these people are turning around and be like, that's not right. So, I mean,
But it's also it's all based on like a lot of times it's based on like their political leanings or just based on their intuitive thoughts of what they currently know, not really based on what they're gonna learn about. You know what I mean? It doesn't really like the experiences of the matter, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that they're the only ones who can know like just how it affects them from purely from like a statistical point of view.
mhm. I mean, I
Because
I think
that's
that
really what it's about. And oh
even
yeah,
with
see,
that,
what I was gonna say too as to why I like that this is coming from the World Athletic. Like I like that it's coming from an organization. It's not like purely a government institution. Like it's not a specific country saying we're banning our people from doing this. You know, and that's the issue. I like here in America, we have a lot of states now who are doing that, like with schools and stuff like that. Like saying like, oh, if you're on a sports team, you can't do that. I think there's something kind of problematic about the government having that say and them doing it very preemptively. Whereas this obviously is done by like an actual sports institution and it's being done more based on data, based on how this is like in a more pragmatic way, I guess.
mhm.
Now, I'm sure there's gonna be people who like are, on the opposite side of me who think like, oh well, this is just stupid. We just like this shouldn't even be like a topic. They shouldn't be allowed. That's it. And I think seeing how they react to people like that, and if they try to appease people like that, is when you can kind of look into it more and see, okay, well, how is that going to play out? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see what you mean. But like I said before, I definitely think, especially now, before the data comes out, that women are gonna be more like, yeah, no, and men are still gonna be, men, and turn around and be
Hmm.
like, all right, well, fuck it, that's competition, right? If you're competition, you're competition. So, and also there are guys that don't want
There's
this,
ways
right?
you can position that where
But I'm
it's like
talking about specifically like women, you know, like that's what I'm talking more on. Because
hmm.
that's going off of this, right? Because then we could get into, I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff to get into here. I mean, you got football, baseball, anything in the States. Should they be able to play? I mean, well, if you're in America, at least, I don't know how it is in other countries, but the only sports that matter are male sports. I mean, there's no female, women's sports that really matter, right? Like, I
Yeah,
think it's
from a
pretty
financial
obvious, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying anything too controversial here. I mean, you look at the numbers between the NBA and the WNBA, you know there's a difference. So, I mean, it would shake things up, absolutely. But also, you have to go into it and say, hey, like, the only thing I can look at it from a guy's perspective, because the only guy that's the only perspective I could really go into it, right? Because, like I said, the women, I mean, they could fight and do their thing. I really can't talk too much on that. I feel like I would know the feeling of that. But as a guy, I would say that if they were to be in sports, in male sports, right, and they come over and they have the testosterone pills and everything that they need, they I would say they would have to be checked all the time. They
Well,
would
in
have to.
general, athletes are checked all the time.
Well, yes, but they would have to probably be checked double. You know, the steroids and then for this, right?
Well,
So
I
they're
mean,
definitely yeah.
it pretty much would be the same thing because
Yeah, but like
testosterone
I
is essentially
said,
like a kind of a
yeah.
steroid in a way.
But like I said, I'm a guy, so I'm thinking of it differently. I'm thinking of it in the sense
I don't
of
know. I
like,
don't
okay, it's
think that matters
competition,
too.
so
I mean, you have to think about it though. Like a lot of decisions made about women's sports long before this was even like a thing people thought about, like that. Most of these decisions made in women's sports are done by like men. I mean, they're the ones because
but
men
are
disproportionately are like in the positions of power, and I don't think that stops because it's like something's has women playing it.
but
So
there is there any like movement behind the women turning around and be like, no, we actually want trans people into these sports, in our sports. Is there any movement like that? Like I don't know.
yeah,
Like
there are people, there are women
but
that
is
say
it?
that.
But it okay? That's not what should I ask. Should I ask? Is the movement strong enough in order to overturn it? And the answer right now is no,
I think the
because if it
fact that there's
did,
a
then it
I
would have already
think
been
that
overturned, right?
no. The fact there's a debate at all about it kind of suggests yeah there is in it because to keep something the same, like which is basically to not acknowledge trans women in this at all,
Mhm.
and to say oh because you're born like this or you might whatever, like that's the default is yeah no that shouldn't be the case. So the fact that's changing at all and they're either even using this kind of language with their ban quote unquote, it kind of suggests yeah there is a pretty strong movement of people who want this to be a thing, and I'm sure that includes a lot of women if it's about women's
Well, I'm
sports.
sure there's women that do, but I'm
I mean,
also
like it's a lot easier to just keep it the same or to even ban it.
yeah. I mean, but it also feels
But the
like,
social forces are going forward.
of course, but I also feel like it's also a lot of people who don't watch sports at all also talking about it, which makes things a lot more. I feel like people who don't watch sports, I don't know why, I just feel like a lot of their opinions on this, and it's not aimed to you or anything. I'm just saying, like, it's kind of like out the window, right? But like, you have like
But there's
a,
people who don't watch, especially women's sports. Like we said, women's sports don't
and no
get
one
nearly
watches
the
women's
amount of
sports.
attention.
Absolutely not. No one
But
sits
that's
down and is
the
like,
overwhelming majority of people talking about this issue.
they don't go on the phone and order. Can I get wings? Oh yeah, the game's on. Yeah, New York Liberty's on for the WNBA. Yeah, they're having a game tonight. Yeah, I want to order wings. I want to like no one does that. No one sits down
But
and
then
watches
at
the
that
game.
point, I mean,
And I mean that's unfortunate for them because these women try. They really do. And I don't
yeah.
watch the games. They're probably good at what they do against other women, but it's not. People just don't care. People do not
It's not
care,
pushed.
right?
It's a cycle. Because
Well, it's not pushed because people, even if it was pushed, no one would care.
I don't think so. I think more
I
people would care if it was pushed at the same level that I mean, men's sports is like
well, it
especially
can't
in
be
America, it's
because
like
it
a
doesn't.
multi-billion-dollar industry.
Well, yeah, well, it
If it
can't
got that kind
be,
of promotion, it would definitely be like
but it can't be because they don't make that much money. They're
well,
the amount of
like I
money.
said, it's a revolving cycle. They don't invest in it. It's not, and there's also, of
Don't they
course,
invest in it?
there is
There are
not
investments in
not
it.
to the same degree. That's not true. But Also,
Not
I
to the
mean,
same degree,
they're
of
all
course
social
not.
forces,
They
of
don't
course.
make enough money. I mean, of course. I mean, that's not
Well, there's not as much money in it, but I'm talking about
exactly.
I'm talking about the investors, the shareholders and stuff like that. Like they don't have as much faith in it because it doesn't make as much money, and because they don't have as much faith in it, they don't invest in it, and they don't invest in it, so there's less return on it. So it's
I'm
like
telling
yeah,
you,
it's like
even
a
if they
cycle.
invested another couple $1 million into it, it still
That'd be a
wouldn't
pretty
be as
significant.
fun. Would you watch it?
I don't watch men's sports, so I'm not the person you should be
That's
asking.
true. But I'm telling you, I mean, no one will watch it.
I'm just talking about. I mean, but you could talk about ratings, but I'm just talking about the
Well,
ability
yeah,
for
that's
people
usually
to
what
live out
matters.
their life.
Oh, okay, so going back to the original point then. Okay. I mean, we
And
could,
I feel like, but because you said you're like, oh, I think you should watch this if you're gonna have an opinion. I mean, well, no, because most people aren't gonna watch this
I feel like
as things stand right now.
I mean, there's certain sports like world, I guess, from the world athletics that people do watch. I mean, you look at the Olympics. I mean, no one just says all the women are on. You know what I mean? Like when the Olympics are on, it's kind of like, oh shit, the Olympics are on. You know, no one really like, oh, the
Yeah.
women. Only like I know here, it's like, no, well, it's women basketball. It's like that doesn't count. You know what I mean? Like it's different. It's definitely different. You know,
But a lot of that's like societal. You know, like if there was like an effort
whatever it is, it
made to,
just
but if
that's
there
the
was an
way it
effort like to
is.
change that, change that societally and to change that from a marketing point of view, they could switch that.
I can be honest with
I'm
you,
not saying
I don't think so.
but my point isn't that if you just throw like $2 billion at at like a women league.
Maybe this situation would work if we killed everybody, killed all of civilization, restarted, then had the same amount of money for NBA as WNBA, have completely new players on both sides,
And it's not even
and
like
then a completely
it's not even
like
what I'm
different
saying.
audience, and it grows together. That's the only way I can see it getting that big. Otherwise, I really can't see it getting that big. And if it does, that's a great thing. But I'm telling you, it's not. It's just not poised
No,
up
I'm not saying you throw like
to
a
be
couple
that.
$1 billion and then it just magically will like overnight will be like
No, I'm
as
not saying
watched as
overnight,
relevant.
but even over the next 10 years, I just don't see it growing as fast. I just don't. You know. But I mean, if they want to add like, okay, I could see the ratings go up a bit if they add a transgender woman to women's basketball because people are gonna be like, oh, well, let me see how this goes. You know what I mean? Or maybe they just find a clip online and maybe they just don't care.
Yeah,
I mean,
honestly, like
it
I
could be
think
that,
that
but I think that could
it's
help
less about.
ratings.
No, I don't even think that would do anything because it would
No,
like you said, they just watch clips, they would see it on the news, and then they'd have an opinion about it. It wouldn't even like
they
make
would
them
watch
watch
it.
the games. The way you make them watch the games
It's
is you make
like
the games feel like an event. You make them like a big deal. That's like what they do. They have the league and they have like you know,
yeah, but
and
you need
they invest in these players. They turn them into like celebrities and stuff like that. And they show like, oh, look how good these guys are. Like that's what they would do if they were really like, and they'd go
it
like all in
doesn't.
on it.
They would need more money, like I
Yeah,
said.
that's my point.
But they can't get
But
money. They can't get more money if they're not making enough money.
that's my point.
So that's the
Exactly. That's
cycle,
exactly
as you mentioned.
that's
Yeah,
exactly my point.
absolutely. But
They don't make as much money, and you could say like societal factors, cultural factors, whatever is the reason why there just isn't an inherent interest in women's sports compared to men's sports.
Mhm.
And because of that, they don't, you know, they don't make as much money, and then they're not watched as much. And then because they're not watched as much, they make as much money. The investors in these sports companies are like, okay, well, it's a secondary thing. Women just don't like sports as much, and men don't want to watch women play sports, so we're not even gonna bother trying to make it like a bigger thing than it could be. And it just
yeah,
keeps happening.
that's not gonna change.
Yeah, I mean, it probably will eventually, but you're right. It's
Maybe,
not like
maybe at one point. Maybe at one point. Um, I don't know if you have anything else to add to
no. I think we covered the
that.
actual topic. We're just kind of talking about. We're not experts on this topic, so
Talking about women's sports. Well,
more into the
right.
news aspect of that.
Well, speaking of LGBTQ, it really doesn't get better news from here, I guess, right? Uganda, right? I don't even know the statistic of trans or gays or lesbian or anybody in that community that lives in Uganda. But if you do, I advise you to get the hell out because they passed an anti-homosexuality bill imposing 10-year prison sentence for same-sex activity. I have a list of some of the stuff that this bill does. So let me get through that, and we're gonna talk about that. So we got a person who is convicted of grooming or trafficking children for purposes of engaging them in, they were so close. They were right here with that. They're right here with that. And then he said in homosexual activities faces life in prison. They could have just said grooming or trafficking children for purposes. Oh, just that. Just they could have ended at children and then faces life in prison. That would be perfect. But it's okay if you're straight and you're grooming kids and you're trafficking them, that's fine, right? Individuals or institutions which support or fund LGBT rights activities or organizations or publish, broadcast, and distribute pro-gay media material and literature also face prosecution and imprisonment. Media groups, journalists, and publishers face prosecution and imprisonment for publishing, broadcasting, distribution of any content that advocates for gay rights or promotes homosexuality. The death penalty for what is described as aggravated homosexuality, that is a sexual abuse of a child, a person with disability, or vulnerable people, or in cases where a victim of homosexual assault is infected with a lifelong illness. Again, if you're straight, doesn't say anything about that. So, if that's what you want to do, you're in the clear in Uganda. Bless you. Property owners also face risk of jail if the premises are used as a brothel for homosexual activities or any other sexual minorities' rights activities. And yeah, so that's what the bill states. I mean, look,
Very nice.
I joke around and I say if you're straight, then it doesn't count for that, but they probably do. I mean, I don't know. I might say something and then it's like, oh, maybe not. But I'm gonna go off and say,
I think this language is included here for
I think it's included for everyone. I think, but I think it's just included for, like you said,
I think they emphasize this
this.
because in Uganda there is
Yeah.
like an effort by like a lot of religious groups there, like evangelicals and types like that, to obviously America kind of does this too, like most countries do when they're anti-gay, like they try to frame like being gay as like you're like a pedophile and you want to groom boys and stuff like that. So I think they include this to kind of infer like, oh, these gay people with kids, and because there've been bills that Uganda has tried to pass where they try to just straight up make it if you have gay sex you get killed. Like there've been bills like that that they've introduced. They replaced, because in 2014 they had another anti-gay bill that they tried to pass where they replaced the death penalty with life in prison for just gay sex, period. And then but that bill got struck down. So and they've been trying to like have like they try to be as extreme as they can on this, basically, because there is like a limit to when like their higher courts essentially will strike it down. I was like reading a little bit on this because there's a lot of countries, unfortunately, that are pretty regressive when it comes to LGBT rights, and like certain African nations are pretty bad with this. So I wanted to kind of read into it, and there's a lot of memes about Uganda being anti-gay as well. So, and when I was like reading it, I was like, wow, like it's just crazy like how normalized some of like this stuff is, where it's just like, oh, you know, you go to hell, and like your kids are like they think that there's Western influences that come into your country and like pay people to be gay. Like they think it's like a choice, like everyone's just straight and you're like brainwashed into being gay and that can just be undone. And like like I said, like some of these, like a lot of these anti-gay talking points are things that kind of exist in Western countries, even countries that are like generally pro-gay, like the U.S. But
Also, don't
it's just
forget.
crazy how far it can go, because it's like just the idea. Like, I don't know, I think the idea they think like, oh yeah, there's people who just pay people to be gay is like crazy to me.
Yeah, don't forget. It's also because they're very religious, right? A lot of these countries. So as you were saying, it's banned in a couple of countries. Actually, it's banned in 30 African countries. So I mean, look, you look at a lot of these African countries, and they're very religious and conservative, right? And if you live in Uganda, any of those 30 African countries, and like I said, if you're a part of that community, which, you know, it says LGBT, it never say anything about Q or AI plus. So if anything, if you're on that side, maybe they let you go. Maybe you're good with that, as long as you're not lesbian, gay, bi, or trans. I mean, that's it, right? Maybe you're okay there. Maybe not. But yeah. So I mean, look, in America, right? You're allowed to, well, you're supposed to, allowed to have the freedom of expression. So you can express yourself anyway, right? You want to be dressed up as a Lil Nas X? Go ahead. You can do it. So if you do that in Uganda, you're probably going to get killed for it or life in prison. So, I mean, some of these countries, and if you're in that community, you have to understand, you know, these countries they do not have freedom of expression like that. So it's unfortunate, but you guys can't go into these countries. You can't waltz in there and decide to do, you know, any fun activity there, because they don't see it as fun. They see it as a problem.
I don't know. I don't really agree with that notion. That like.
Well, it's not whether you agree or disagree. It's just a fact of these are how other countries are run. You know, like.
Yeah, they run bad. Like,
okay,
bad.
Exactly, but
like,
what I'm saying is,
I don't know. That's like I don't agree with the like, if you don't like it, leave mentality, because it's like, what does that
no,
accomplish?
it's not. I'm not saying. Look, you could. Yeah,
like,
I did say leave.
America had a lot of this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
but
you're saying, oh, don't
as
be here if you're gay. Like, you know, obviously, like, you know, gay people in America aren't gonna come rushing to Uganda. Like,
yeah, no, they're obviously not.
Because the gay people in Uganda are people who were born there and people who live there currently. Like, so you're telling them, yeah, gay, leave. Which, I mean, they should do, honestly.
Well, there you go. You just said it. You just said it.
You know what I mean? Like, no shit. Like, no shit. They're safer if they leave. But my point is
exactly.
No, but it's like you're saying, like, oh, this country's just like this. Like, that's not.
No, I'm not. Look, I'm not saying like, oh, they can't change. It's just, you know, that's just, you know, the way it is, with no big activism to, you know, destroy this bill, right?
There is activism.
I'm not saying there isn't. I said it's not big enough. And yeah, okay, if you want to sit in Uganda and you want to create this big movement, go ahead and listen. You'll be a martyr. You'll really be a martyr for your movement, right? And if you want to do that, you can do that. It's gonna be tough. It would be very tough to do that, right? Like, that's not something you just normally do. The protesting there for that versus the protesting here, it's a lot easier here than it would be over there, right? And we can always joke around and be like, oh, well, you go to certain states, they don't like this. Yeah, but it's nothing compared to this, right?
I mean, honestly,
no. We
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of Americans who read this article, and they're for it. I mean,
all right, some of them are for it, but let me ask you the question then: would you rather protest here, or would you rather protest in Uganda?
I'd protest wherever I live, and if I felt like there's something.
Oh, you cornball! I don't want to hear from that. Oh my God! You know you would not want to go to Uganda and try to protest that shit. You know you'd rather be in the United States to protest that. You know that for a fact.
It's not about what I'd rather do. I mean,
I'm just saying
they're both very risky depending on what part of America you're in. It's very like.
What I'm saying is, it's a lot riskier elsewhere than it is here.
I think that varies greatly. There's people who get killed protesting. It's pretty common. It's not like.
Okay. I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
I mean, that's like.
What I'm saying
that's like the worst that can happen is you die, and like, yeah, there's people who die protesting here. So yeah.
Okay, but it wouldn't
if I was born in a country, and I felt like oppressed enough to the point where I had to go out and protest, or I just wanted to protest something, then yeah, I'd do it.
But what I'm saying is that it's obviously more dangerous there than it would be in the United States. You're saying
Well,
there's some
yeah,
parts of the U.S.
obviously.
that are more dangerous. Okay, it would be dangerous, but I don't think it would be more dangerous than protesting in Uganda.
I never said it was more. I said
Okay,
that
but that was the point
it
I'm
gets
trying to
there.
make here. You would rather, if you had to protest, you'd rather do it in America because you have more of a chance of living than you do in Uganda, or living outside of bars. Either one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it is. Like I said, man. I mean, me and Andrew both agree freedom of expression, right? Uh, you can do what you want, right? I say it all the time. I don't care. You do whatever you feel like you have to do. Unfortunately, these countries don't think that way, okay? And they operate their own way. I mean, if you want to change the world, go ahead and change it, but damn, that's going to be hard. It's in 30 African countries. I don't even know. There's definitely like a bunch of other countries that I don't even, that I can't even think off the top of my head that I have it banned as well. So, I mean, it's crazy, but like I said, Uganda and a lot of these countries are not just very conservative, but they're very religious. So it's going to be very hard for, someone that is, usually I would say, for someone that's American that comes out and would try to, I guess, quote unquote, like help, certain people. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm not talking about Americans coming in there and like, telling them how to live their lives. I'm talking about people who
But
live
that's how
in
they
these
feel.
countries.
But you also said that
But
people
that's
feel like
a
they
lot of
come
that's
from
that's the
America
thing, and
and
that's
they
that's
just
their that's
pay.
their
But
that's
that's
their
what I'm
number one that's their
saying.
number one talking point. That's bullshit. That's not what I'm
But
talking
but
about. I'm
they
not
but
saying
they don't
yeah,
recognize that.
yeah, and
They
they're
don't
wrong.
recognize this
They're just
bullshit.
wrong.
Okay, exactly. Okay, but they don't recognize that. That's what I'm saying. It's hard to do.
It is hard, but that's why you have to kind of say, yeah, this is how it is.
You
Because
could go. If you
I'm not
want to
saying
protest in Uganda, have fun.
no. I mean, there probably are going to be protests from kind
There
of like
probably will be, but it's gonna be rough.
yeah, like there's gay people born everywhere. Like you
Of
could have the
course. I mean,
you know what I
I'm not
mean.
saying that. I'm not saying they're not born
And
everywhere. It's
there's
just
gay activists in Uganda who believe. I mean,
I've seen some
there
of
could be
them.
up to
I'm not.
500,000 gay people living there. Who are a lot of them are probably closeted. That's like what they estimate based on trends. So it's like, I mean, you're gonna deny
Well, first
500,000
off,
people.
how many people live in Uganda? I don't know how many people live in Uganda. It's
I
five
mean,
hundred thousand.
the percentages don't really matter. That's 500,000 people.
Out of what?
Okay,
I
like
know, I know,
40,
I know. It could be a lot of
like
people,
but
but I'm just saying, like, how many people live in Uganda? I just want to know. Like, I'm not.
I just googled their population as of 2021. It says 45 million.
They have 45 million people in Uganda. Wow, this is a big
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
A decent sized country right there. 45 million. So 500,000. Wow, that's actually I mean, that's what I figured. A smaller margin. It's pretty small, but also like,
That's still enough
listen,
to
man.
make like the
I
difference
mean,
in a lot of
yeah,
people's
yeah,
lives.
it definitely is, but I mean, it's gonna be rough. I mean, still, I mean, that's gonna be rough for them. I think.
And again, that's an estimate. That's not like,
Yeah, that's estimate. It could also be
like
total bullshit.
I could totally believe it's way more than that.
It could be
Honestly, I
more. It could be less. I mean, it depends. I don't really know. All right,
think more is more likely.
could be.
But I think it'll cap at like it could cap at like 1 million to 2 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I could see it. It'd get to 45. Yeah,
Maybe.
I mean again, but that's kind of my point. I mean, it's really unfortunate, and I think they're the bigger problem. Like I I don't really like the mentality just looking at this. And obviously being for it, I mean, for it, you're just kind of insane to me.
Yeah.
But
I
also,
mean,
like,
yeah, I mean,
also people who are like, I mean, it's their like, different countries or whatever. Like, no, I mean,
I'm in the camp
different
of like,
countries is just
I'll
like, okay, your
say,
culture's different, or maybe like the way you run the economy is different. Even that could kind of get fucky, but
listen, I'll say
like
that
stuff like that.
these
But when it
countries
comes
are
to like your
different.
right to like, you know, be with someone or to like dress a certain kind of way, like it's kind of insanity to me to just be like, oh yeah, like they're just different. Like no, like they're um they're just wrong. And that shouldn't
I
be
mean,
seen as like as me looking down on them. I don't look down on
no,
people who
no
live
one's saying you look
there.
down on them. No one's. I don't think anyone's gonna think that.
A lot of that's a pretty persistent talking point against people who kind of who are like who push it back against like the Western idea of being more pro-gay because they
Hmm.
view it as like these Westerners think they're so much smarter than you and stuff like that.
I just think of the interview
I
that
mean,
we.
the reality of it is honestly, if anything, I mean the West kind of shoving Christianity down a lot of these countries' throats is a big reason why they're so anti-gay too, which is ironic. But
Well, they believe in. They probably believe in Christianity besides the West.
I mean, the evangelical community does contribute a lot to that, though.
True. I was gonna say it reminds me of the that interview that we watched. It was like on gay rights or whatever, and um, this guy I don't know exactly from where, definitely had to be from some African country. And he goes, "Why are you gay?" And like everyone, I think a lot of people know about that interview, and it's
Yeah,
just
it's a
funny.
meme.
It's a meme, and it's funny because it's like, well, then the person responded back, and then he then again said, "Why are you gay?" And it's like it just flew over the head, just did not understand, right? But you know, obviously
Yeah.
that's memed, but
Well,
then
I
you have
think the
a serious thing that goes on right here, and it's like, they're gonna, if this is what they want, if they want the freedom to express themselves in this manner, they're gonna have to go out there and protest no matter how dangerous it is. Which, I mean, it just, it sucks for those group of people that live in
does
Uganda.
suck. But
That's why that
speaking of protesting racial issues,
nah. Here
insert
we
U.S.
go.
states. Can you introduce the next topic, buddy?
No, we could go to the next topic. Absolutely, I'm ready for this one.
Alright.
You want me to introduce this one?
I mean, it says
Oh
me
yeah,
doing
yeah.
it.
Okay, absolutely. I mean, it could have went to
Could have
you.
been either
I
way,
didn't
but
mind.
I
Uh,
thought you wanted to.
so Florida decided. I mean, if you know the history with Florida and schools, it's usually not a good thing, right?
Well, it's not history. This is what's happening right now.
Oh, no, no, no. I'm just saying in general when it comes to their schooling. I mean, they get rid of so many textbooks. I mean, look, we saw a video maybe last year, and it was a teacher there saying they got rid of all these books. They banned so many books, and now we
Damn
gotta try and
books.
learn this, and it's like it's just a pain in the neck, right? So the Florida education says this, okay? Talking about Rosa Parks, and this is an actual quote in the book, okay? It says this. Rosa Parks showed courage. One day she rode the bus. She was told to move to a different seat. She did not. She did what she believed is right. Now, I don't know if you can tell what the difference is there between that and what was supposed to be in there, but I think it also should be obvious. Let me read it again. Rosa Parks showed courage. One day she rode the bus. She was told to move to a different seat because of her skin color. She did not. She did what she believed is right. They forgot to mention skin color. They didn't mention it at all. The one thing that is the whole point of her moving to a different, or for her not giving up her seat, they got rid of.
Yeah.
I just don't understand what is the point of doing this. And then, and I got something else that's up on here. All right, so now that I got it up, it says they have a list of other names, right? They have Roberto Clemente, which they don't mention his race at all either. And they talk about Susan B. Anthony. But check this one out, right? They say Susan B. Anthony believed everyone should be treated fairly. There was a time when women could not vote. Susan helped change that. Now women can vote. You see the difference there? Where you can mention the fact that she's a woman, but with Rosa Parks, I mean, besides the fact of her pronoun being she, they didn't mention woman, but it also didn't mention the fact that she's black. Which, in this case, I would think it's a really strong argument to say, yeah, maybe you should mention that. That was the whole point of doing what she did. She didn't just sit there just to sit there. But that, my friends, is the Florida education system.
It's crazy. It's really is. Like, just like the way they kind of appease, like, I guess this sentiment of, oh, like there's critical race theory and they're teaching it. It just doesn't make sense because even like the original like version of this is very tepid, you know? And it should be. It's like a little like thing you read on like the side of a textbook, it looks like, where it's like fun fact about, this person in history. Like, I thought it was funny. They don't even mention like, whole back of the bus thing. It's just like, oh, change your seat, like a different seat.
It's just funny, the whole thing. I mean,
Hmm.
but hey, I mean, I guess it's nothing to really be too mad about because knowing Florida, they're gonna redo their textbooks anyway and get different ones. So I mean, hey, that's just Florida education for you. What can I say,
It's gonna
right?
be like, yeah, it's gonna be like, oh, actually, Rosa Parks wasn't even a person.
Yeah.
You
So
never had issues like that.
there's that. There's nothing for me to add to that.
I mean,
So
there's a
if
lot of
you,
angles with the issues with Florida's education because now they've been kind of ramping up the anti-black stuff, the anti-gay. Um, Recently, yeah, they banned like a whole like African American history course. Basically being like, oh, kids don't need to learn about you know their history because it makes white people look bad. And they talk about queer theory and stuff like that. It's just very like it's very strange, like how they're so committed to their attack on on just educating people, and it is concerning that there is like more and more people who kind of play along with it and think that actually learning less is learning more, because that's essentially what it comes down to, right?
Mhm.
Like, because when you hear someone out and know where they come from, it really explains a lot about why they say the things that they do. And I think you can understand that to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, you learn something new every day as it is. Now you talk to a
Yeah.
different person, you're gonna get a different idea or story or whatever it is that they're trying, whatever message they're trying to tell you, right? I mean, that's just
Yeah.
basic human nature.
It's weird because for a long time, like I feel like a lot of um a lot of the mobilization that the right has done, in the past decade has been kind of centered around this idea of like we're for freedom, we're for free speech, we want to like hear like the marketplace of ideas and stuff like that. That's how like a lot of these like current really popular right wing media guys became popular is they kind of would go around saying that, and they would like Ben Shapiro would go on like these college campuses and they're more liberal. He'll talk to these people and try to like be the conservative talking, and the students would protest it, and he'd be like, "See, like we're for freedom. They want to censor us." But now it's like in these states that have like these super majority Republicans, they just want to ban stuff. And they don't care at all about like hearing people out and trying to like teach people
Well,
things
yeah, that's the problem. I mean, that's
fundamentally.
something that, I think Republicans should do is definitely, if they talk about freedom of speech, we should actually have, you know, more talks on certain topics, right? But
Yeah, it kind of
that's
makes
just
me feel like I don't think a lot of these guys ever really cared about the freedom of speech. They just kind of wanted to use it in spaces where they're the minority.
well. Look at it
But
this
then in
way.
spaces where they're the majority, they don't. Then it's like okay, out the window.
Look at Twitter, right? I mean, why doesn't Alex Jones have a Twitter account?
I mean, because of his whole defamation thing.
No, I know why. I
But
know
yeah,
the
but
reason.
more notoriously
But
because of
there
the
you go,
feelings of Elon Musk.
right? You're supposed to have freedom of speech. It never says, "Oh, but that person's bad. Oh, that person said something wrong." Like, okay, isn't the whole
I
point of
mean, if
freedom of
anything,
speech?
I don't know. I think his ban's fine for like just considering how far he went with what he did. To be honest, like at least more than other people.
I don't know. I can't
But
disagree. I
in the
can't
case,
agree with that.
um, I think there's a limit to
If
the
if
kind
you're
of to the
going,
harm that people can cause,
hmm
especially when you have to factor in like Twitter as it exists now, like social media as it exists now, is like they're owned by private corporations.
no, I get that, but it's not about that at this point because it's Elon going on and saying freedom of speech,
Yeah,
and
I
other
agree. That's
right
what
when
I
they're
was gonna
saying freedom of
say is
speech.
that like
Yeah,
under this
that's what it's
context
about.
now where it's like, Twitter isn't run by people who are trying to like make as much money as possible. Clearly, clearly, because
Oh,
he's
obviously
losing a lot of
not.
money with Twitter. Um, but he bought it under this notion of I'm gonna, come in there and I'm gonna make it free and we're gonna like make Twitter this great platform for open source and freedom of speech and all this stuff. And none of that's really happening, honestly. I mean, the guy's just kind of like just wants appeasement from people. And a lot of the people that happen to appease him are like on the far right. So he just kind of like placates with them and does what they want for the most part. But Alex Jones is an example where he's not doing that, and it's for a purely personal reason. So if anything, I mean, it's less consistent than it was with these like weird you know tech bro liberals that were working there before. It's
Yeah.
kind of it is it's weird, yeah. Like there just isn't really a consistency when it comes to the free speech issue,
Oh yeah, no, of course
particularly
not.
with like the right wing. Like I don't know. I see a lot of people talk about this like from a left wing perspective, and for them, even if like I feel like some of them kind of are too preemptive with wanting to restrict what people can do in some cases. Like there's examples of like where they'll say like, oh, this person shouldn't say that or this, and I don't care. But at the same time, I think there is like a consistent thing there. Like there's like okay, like they're okay with this being said, but they think this goes too far, or they think that saying this can cause this problem or whatever. Like I could see the logic, but I feel like with
Hmm
these guys, it's literally just what do I like, what do I don't like.
Yeah, no, I mean that's obvious. And that's something that, like I said, when people are talking about Elon's gonna come in, it's like, all right, well, I hope he does something with the app that's good, of course, right? But I never really bought the whole freedom of speech thing because I use Twitter. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
like
and it's
I
like there's so
understand how
many
it
ways
operates,
how that's obviously bullshit,
you
right?
know,
Like
and I knew
even
it was
on
gonna
like
be
a purely like
bullshit.
let's
Yeah.
like he can't. There's no way in hell he just lets people say whatever they want
Oh, absolutely
because
not.
Twitter's a company still at the end of the day, so they're an advertiser gonna leave if they see like freaking Nazi posting, open Nazi posting on Twitter.
Of course, because you can't do that. Why? Because they have their own set of rules, which we're not saying is wrong, but if you're going to say there's free speech, then allow it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, then why don't you allow it? Not saying that we want that to be out there, but if you're going to say something, then do it, is basically what we're trying to say here, right?
Yeah, like it's pretty and hell, I mean, there's people who are critical of Elon that he's banned too.
Yeah,
So
I
even if you
mean,
want to say like, oh
that's,
well, that's too far. I mean, there's examples of people not being too far, or like he did like a random like weird crackdown on parody accounts, and they tried to crack down on
well,
people
yeah,
like promoting like financial platforms outside of Twitter.
that's right. They did do
So
that. Did that ever come into effect? I don't even
it
know.
did, they pulled it, but the fact that was going to be something they were
Okay,
going to
yeah.
do like really says a lot about the mindset of Twitter's management right now.
Oh yeah, they just want to make money at this point, or he does, and
Hmm.
it's like they don't know how. And doing this whole like Twitter blue thing, I mean, I'm not.
I'm sure it's
I'm not a
moderately
fan of it.
successful.
I don't see myself paying for it anytime soon. Uh, did you see they actually getting rid of the legacy verified accounts? So those people now have to pay.
Yeah.
So like all
I
the
do. I love though when you highlight it and it's like an old legacy account. It'll be like, this is a legacy verified account. It may or may not be notable. That shit kills me.
that's funny. So now you're gonna get a whole bunch of liberals complaining, like Stephen King and everybody else with like, oh well, why do I gotta pay for this? And it's funny because it's too bad they do gotta pay for it, but they might be the people that actually do pay for it. So I mean,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
because it's like, it's weird. It really feels like this was like just, but this is the thing. It's all like off the hip. It's all like kind of just done in the moment. There's no real consistency with what he wants to do. It's just kind of like, oh, this will get attention.
yeah,
Like,
and they're
because
losing money.
like it was like a suggestion that was made as a joke and it became like a big deal. So now it's like just part of the platform now, even though it like literally there's no reason for it. It's just stupid.
Oh yeah,
Like, why have a verified account?
oh yeah,
Like the
and
whole
it's
point of a
like
verified account is so they know it's you. But if anyone can be verified, like it's
that
the whole
doesn't
main.
really matter, right? It's kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, and there's another thing, right? So then the two-step verification, you can only do that if you're with Twitter Blue. So it's like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
It's
which
so
that's
stupid.
like, it's like weird. And then it's like, and then people are like, oh, this is concerned a security issue. And then he says, oh, well, it's actually less secure to do it that way. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So you
So
want people to
I don't
pay
know.
because it's a feature that'll make it more secure, but it won't make it more secure. But it's still gonna be behind a paywall. Like, what's the point?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So I mean, look, you look back on a couple months ago, last year, he did it as a publicity stunt, and he got dragged into a lawsuit and said, you know what? Never mind, I'll buy it. So he had to buy it. I don't think he
I
was
don't
gonna
even think it
buy
was a
it.
never mind. I think it was just that you have to finish this deal.
Yeah, you have to finish this deal type of thing. So he bought it. Um, but yeah, they're losing money, man. It's crazy.
Do you have the numbers, or did you pull that away?
Oh man, I had the numbers. I had them lined up, but
Yeah.
I don't have them no more.
You should have kept it up. I felt like this was gonna come up somehow, just cause.
Yeah, I didn't think it was gonna come up, dude.
Yeah,
I
like,
did have the numbers out here.
I don't know. But yeah, the free speech stuff to me when it comes to like a lot of these right wingers, particularly like elected Republicans and billionaires who are like really super serving right wingers, I feel like it's all bullshit. And I mean, like, being free is like something that I like kind of value I kind of center my politics around, like having the freedom to do like the things you want to do, to have the ability to live out the kind of life you want to live out, not just socially but economically too.
Mhm.
So, and obviously I think that the right fails super hard economically in terms of economic freedom. But, you know, I think like just 2 or 3 years ago I would have been like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of like people who are more whatever, but at least in terms of elected people, like all of them are like freaking gonzo. The overwhelming majority when it comes to social freedoms, it's crazy.
Mm. And when it comes to social media, Twitter, obviously, they're not doing so well financially, but the next social media I think we could talk about, because
Ooh,
I think we're done on Twitter here. We go to TikTok. They had the congressional hearing for it, and oh boy, I mean,
a doozy. These guys.
it I hate it
Oh
because
my
it
god.
happened with Facebook and it happened again. It's people not knowing what they're talking about and saying it. I had a whole segment on this show about why TikTok's bad, and you want to know the questions that they asked for it? They
Nothing that you
said
brought up.
they nothing that I brought up. They said, "Does TikTok connect to Wi-Fi? Will it connect to any devices to the Wi-Fi besides the phone that you put it on, right?"
Mhm.
They talked about the TikTok challenges, how many people died. You know how many people died in social media in general? Cyberbullying on Twitter, Facebook, and any other of these social media platforms? Like, these are things that we're not. Yeah, it's addictive. I'm not gonna say it. You could go back to the episode, and if I have to redo the whole thing again, my whole spiel about it, all right, I will. But you could go back to that episode, which was last week. I talked about TikTok. I talked about what was wrong with it, and even then, I don't have everything. And it's like these guys are so old, they don't understand how things work. They'll say, this is bad. Yes, it is bad, but why? Okay, it takes information. What information? What does it get into? It's like,
It takes information
and
from your public videos.
yeah, you know what it is? I gotta sit down and watch a whole thing of it because I just see so many stupid clips of these stupid questions, and it's like I gotta go back and probably watch in its full entirety. But I feel like I'm just gonna lose brain cells if I do so. So it's very hard, man. But God, it's like you could bring up so many things, man. And you bring up the Wi-Fi, and they say, "Oh well, why does the TikTok have to something with your pupils? Why does it have to recognize the face?" It goes, "Well, if you put a face filter on, it like to know where your facial features are because in order to use the filter, it needs to do that." And it's like, what a stupid question.
I probably didn't even know what like a filter was.
Exactly. It's like, dude, they've been out for such a long time. Facebook has it. The one that made it the most popular is probably Snapchat. I mean, it's it's ridiculous how we have these people who are not. We need people who are Gen Z and millennials to talk about these issues because people that are in their 50s or 40s and above just don't understand it. And that's fine. I don't expect you to. No one voted you into office or any of these things so then you could turn around and talk about
Honestly,
TikTok.
at this point, just because of how frequently this shit happens, there really should just be like a straight up, just like like a tech literacy course, like that's part of like being in Congress.
This should be a tech literacy course. I
Like
absolutely
they should just
agree.
have like a test or something, like when you get elected, and if you fail it, you have to like take like a course like that has. It's like really embarrassing.
It really is.
It's
And
just like
it's
I don't know. It just highlights just how disconnected like the politicians are, because like you can pull a guy off of the street and you probably would have asked the CEO of TikTok a better freaking question
oh,
about
absolutely,
national
man.
security and like taking information.
Oh,
It,
absolutely,
it
dude.
it's just crazy. And it sucks too. Like I feel like some of it is because, a lot of the problems with TikTok aren't really exclusive to TikTok, but they want to make it exclusive because they're trying to come at it from the, oh, this is a national security threat, CCP, blah blah blah. And to the extent that's like a legitimate concern, I think is kind of being overplayed, I guess. Because like we said, I mean, all of these like American social media platforms do the same type of things.
Yeah, there's a lot of platforms that do similar things. I went on my rant about Facebook. I did it last week. You definitely go back, check that episode out when we talked about social medias and some of the problems with it. Um, I mean, it's really something. We really need these. We need either politicians talking about these things, or they need to hire like a group of people who are young and techie and understand the dangers of social media.
Yeah.
And I mean like full on. We need geeks. We need computer geeks in the room to
I
talk
don't know if I did.
about it.
I don't know if I'd be for that, honestly.
Oh, I'd be for that. I'd be for computer geeks and I'd be for young people to talk in our room about it. Absolutely. Because that's what needs to be done.
It sounds nice, but then I think the kind of people that would do something like that are like fucking like the NFT people on Twitter. It's like the last thing I'd want.
Yeah, but there's certain people that would have to, there have to be certain qualifications. Not just the NFT as your
I'm
Twitter
sure those
profile
guys would.
picture.
I'm sure those guys would fit the qualifications perfectly.
No, there's some people that definitely know what they're talking about that work with computers that, you know,
I mean, yeah, I'm sure
understand.
they do.
Yeah,
But
as without NFTs and all that.
like knowing how the platforms work is only half the problem. That's why I think just like having like them have to have some kind of basic understanding of how they work and
Hmm.
like things like that would be better, because ideally, I mean, obviously a lot of these people don't really fall in it anyways. But they're people you at least elect, and you have a choice. So it's like, ideally, they're people who are gonna represent your values. That's the theory of it. Like basically, like I don't want like unelected people to be like coming in and deciding how we go about this whole issue.
Yeah.
NFT
Um,
thing was kind of tongue in cheek, I guess.
but yeah,
But
and
do you think so?
yeah,
Do you think TikTok should be banned?
honestly, yes.
You
And I
do.
said it. I said it the last time. I said it last time. Yes. I mean, for my own selfish reasons, no. I think it's a great app.
Okay. Oh yeah. Yes, I remember. You said it
Yeah.
should be, but you don't want it to be.
Yeah. I said that last week. You too. Watch the episode. you know, but I mean, like I said, man. I mean, my own selfish reasons. I would love to have it, and I mean, yeah. I really can't say any more than that. Than watch the last episode, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I said social media apps. I mean, real scummy owners there are. I mean, they collect your information, but there is one person that I actually saw a clip of that I actually didn't send you. It was actually somebody saying, "Well, why don't we collect money from the information that you collect out of us?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely."
You said that.
I don't know who said that, but it was during the congressional meeting. And people were like, "Oh, he doesn't understand," and I was like, "No, actually, that's a good point. That's actually a good point. We should be collecting." So I think Yang even talked about this when he was, competent, if I should
Yeah.
say. But it's like things like that where I'm like, "Oh, wow!" Like uh, I agree with that. That was one of the things that was said. I was actually agreeable on. We should be.
Mm.
I mean, the amount of information that they collect out
But
of
that's
us
what I
is kind
mean,
of
though. Like
insane.
people like that's an example of something that would apply to like every social media platform because they all do that, and that's like a big issue. But that cuts so deep into their profits,
Hmm.
and these advertisers that make the ads for these platforms too. Like that's something that would like never get traction, but it gets a lot of traction just saying, "Hey, ban TikTok."
Oh yeah,
One
absolutely.
company really gets affected. I mean, I guess there's advertisers there, but they could just move on to whatever ends up replacing it. Because this, if there was a real TikTok ban, like 30 at least companies would just come out of nowhere and try to like be the
Oh, this is
replacement.
how Elon makes money. He brings back Vine and he just makes it TikTok
Yeah, yeah,
too.
there was discussion of that, like him reviving Vine because Twitter owns it technically. And honestly, that probably is the most likely thing that would happen. Like
Yeah, because
Vine
he
would
can
come
actually
back.
make a profit out of it.
Yeah, like that's how he freaking makes money off Twitter. And then all like the freaking Gen Zers who are like our age and older are like, "Oh my god, Vine's the best thing ever." It was so fucking funny, and then it's just like shit.
Yeah,
But I mean, it would be funny because all the people making TikToks are just go to Vine and just make the same thing. So
basically.
no.
And also, I mean, if you're in the United States, I mean, you just use a VPN if you want to pay for that and use TikTok.
Yeah, yeah. If you're like more tech savvy, but at that
Fill your
point, it's like
selfish
who's
desires by laughing at videos and, you know,
yeah,
and whatnot. And yeah, that's all I have for TikTok today. And
yeah.
I
I think that's
mean,
all. I
I think
mean,
that's all we have just in general today.
yeah, I think that's a show.
Talked about a good amount of topics as usual, and we hope you guys enjoy this episode. And like I said, if you want to go back and listen to me talk about TikTok from last week, I give you the rundown. We're gonna be following this congressional meeting uh, pretty closely. We're gonna be seeing clips. We're gonna be seeing what's going on here. But I mean, there's definitely dangerous stuff within TikTok, and it's definitely something that I think everyone should look into, and try to not look at it through, I want to say not biased, but try to find good, like, objective sites that do talk about the problems with TikTok. And I think that if you see that, you'll understand what I mean. Um, and like I said, we're going to follow it closely. We hope you follow it closely because we're hoping that we get a lot of young people watching. Even if you're not young and you're older and you don't understand, definitely look into it for yourself. Uh, And I mean, that's all I can, and that's just a general statement with anything, right? But definitely with TikTok because it's a big thing going on right now. And yeah, so that's all we got for today. So we hope you enjoy this Friday, and we hope you have a great day.
Yep, definitely.
All right, and we'll see you guys next time.